You've probably heard about the end times battle of Armageddon, right? Well, a lot of people point to Zechariah chapter 14 as a key prophecy about it. But what if there is a completely different way to read that chapter? What if this famous prophecy isn't about our future at all, but about something that already happened almost 2,000 years ago?
So that's the big question we're tackling today. Is this a prophecy about the future or the past? Are we talking about some far-off Armageddon or a jaw-droppingly precise prediction of something that's already gone down in the history books? It's a real puzzle, and we're going to look at all the pieces together.
So here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll look at that common Armageddon idea. Then we'll explore the possibility that it was all fulfilled back in 70 AD. We'll get right into the verse itself, pull in a really interesting counter-promise from Isaiah, and then see if we can make it all fit together.
All right, first up, the Armageddon prophecy. This is the view that you've probably heard before.
You know, when most people read Zechariah 14, they get this picture of a massive, final battle for Jerusalem. The idea is that all the nations on earth will come against the city, and just when it looks like it's all over, bam, God steps in and saves the day. It's a huge, dramatic, end-time scenario, and it's a really common belief. And it all really hinges on one specific powerful verse.
And here it is. Zechariah 14 verse 2, "For I will gather all nations against Jerusalem to battle, and the city shall be taken, and the houses rifled, and the women ravished, and half of the city shall go forth into captivity, and the residue of the people shall not be cut off from the city." Wow. I mean, the language there is incredibly intense, right? It's specific, it's brutal. This single verse is the bedrock for this entire discussion.
Okay, now for the big twist. Let's switch gears and look at a totally different angle on this. This is where things get really fascinating.
So what if this prophecy isn't about our future at all? I mean, what if it's actually a play-by-play of something that already happened? We're talking about the Roman Empire's brutal takedown of Jerusalem back in 70 AD. It's a pretty radical idea, so let's be clear about what we mean by that.
Right, so this idea is called historical fulfillment. The argument is basically this. Zechariah, writing way back when, was actually predicting a very specific event about 550 years in his future, the Roman siege. So the big question becomes, do the details actually line up with what we know from history?
Okay, so let's do just that. We're going to take that verse, Zechariah 14:2, and go through it piece by piece, but we're going to read it with first-century glasses on.
First up, I will gather all nations. Now, does that literally mean every single nation on the planet today? Well, in this interpretation, no. All nations could easily refer to the Roman Empire. Think about it. At the time, Rome ruled pretty much the entire known world, and its army wasn't just made up of Italians. It was this huge multinational force with soldiers from all over its empire. Then you get to the really graphic part. The cities shall be taken, the houses rifled, and the women ravished. I mean, that sounds exactly like the horrors of ancient warfare, doesn't it? And if you read historical accounts of what the Romans did when they finally broke through Jerusalem's walls, yeah, it's a terrifyingly accurate description of that violent, devastating sack of the city. Okay, what about this line? Half of the cities shall go forth into captivity. Now we have to remember, in this kind of language, half doesn't always mean a literal 50.0%. It's often just a way of saying a really big chunk. And historically, that's exactly what happened. A massive number of the survivors were captured and sold into slavery all across the Roman Empire. And then there's that last little bit. The residue of the people shall not be cut off. You know, even this detail seems to fit. This could be talking about a small group of survivors, maybe the Jews who managed to escape the city before the final brutal assault, or even some of the people who the Roman commander Titus decided to spare. So you can see how the historical details line up pretty well. But hold on, because there's another piece to this puzzle that makes the argument even stronger. And for that, we have to bring in another prophet, Isaiah.
See, Isaiah brings up a really crucial question. When Jerusalem is finally restored, does God still gather nations to judge it? Zechariah says God does gather the nations, but let's see what Isaiah has to say about that.
And wow, check this out. It's a night and day difference. In Zechariah, God says, "For I will gather all nations against Jerusalem." He's taking credit for it. It's his action. But then you look at Isaiah, who's talking about a future, restored Jerusalem, and he says that when nations gather against it, they shall surely gather together, but not by me. God explicitly says, that's not my doing. It's a total flip. One is a divine judgment, the other is an attack that God does not sanction. And Isaiah really drives this point home. He continues with this promise of absolute protection, saying, "No weapon that is formed against thee shall prosper." It's like he's laying down a new rule for this restored era.
God's posture has completely changed, from using nations for judgment to actively defending his people from them.
So what gives? Do we have a major contradiction here between two prophets? Not at all. There's actually a way to make this all fit together perfectly.
And the answer is surprisingly simple. They aren't in conflict because they're talking about two completely different periods in Israel's history. Zechariah is describing a judgment on Israel before its final restoration. Think of the pattern with Babylon and, in this view, Rome. But Isaiah, he's describing the new reality for Israel after that restoration. Two different eras, two different rules.
Okay, so let's just run through the logic here one more time to make sure it's crystal clear. Step 1, the premise. Zechariah 14 says God himself gathers nations against Jerusalem for judgment. Step 2, the conflict. Isaiah 54 says that in the future, restored era, any gathering like that is specifically not from God. So, step 3, the conclusion. Zechariah's prophecy must be about an event that happens before this final restoration. And when you look at history, the Roman siege in 70 AD fits that description like a glove.
So it's a really compelling argument, right? It takes this massive prophecy that many people place in the future and anchors it firmly in the past. And that really leaves us with a huge lingering question to think about. If a prophecy this big, one that so many connect to Armageddon, might actually be about a past event, well, what else might we be misreading?